I think that's a good summary. So the Nephilim, this term is used in two spots in that passage in Numbers there, when it says that the sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim, Numbers 13, I think it's 33. And then it's also mentioned back in Genesis 6:4. And then the people that seem to be part of the Anakim, or the Nephilim or the Rephaim, these terms all are kind of related by saying these people are like the Anakim or these people are like the Rephaim. It keeps mentioning that they're huge people, that they're really big people. They're scary, that they inhabit the land, that both the promised land and other lands, right? We saw last week that they were in the land of that belonged to Moab and that belonged to the people that descended from Esau. And so God cleared them out when he let Moab into their land, and he also cleared out the giants, and they have different names. Everybody has a different name for these folks that seem to be these giant people, which was all the other names, right? The Zamzumin, the Zumin, or the Zuzim, the Emim, the Horites, the Avim. They kind of get a different name wherever they are, but they all have this commonality in that they're in this place that God doesn't want them, and that he has other people in mind to inhabit that place, and they need to be cleared out. Anything to add on that?
I think you've got the reference at the bottom of chapter 15 of Genesis.
Oh yeah.
You jumped to 6 and then the other one, so just that's probably good to mention too.
You got that pulled up right now?
Yeah. It's to your descendants I have given this land. Obviously, God here speaking to Abraham, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenite, the Kenizzite, the Kadamite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Jebusite.
So the Rephaim, you're saying?
Yeah, it's listed there.
Yeah, the Rephaim show up a lot. So the Rephaim are going to pop up in Joshua, and I did a search on Rephaim, and they seem to be all over the place.
Yeah, I don't have the scripture handy, but it seems like it's often referred to as they are like the family.
Mm-hmm.
So like all of these other ones, and it's like similar to. But then this is the reference where it was an actual people, not just a
Gotcha.
life. But there was certainly a group.
Just the Rephaim.
The Rephaim, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then the other thing that I found out when I was trying to kind of refamiliarize myself with this was Genesis 14. So we have this story about so there's these kings and they're fighting, and they're the kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, and some other kings that kind of partner up with them. They rebel against this king Chedorlaomer, which I think is the funny name. His name starts with Cheddar. That's how I remember it. But so they partner up against these very powerful kings, and the very powerful kings come in, and I never noticed this before, but the Chedorlaomer and his kings, which come from the area of Babylon, so they're these kind of very powerful figures. They come down and they fight against these 5 local kings, and they end up wiping out a bunch of Rephaim, Zuzim, Emim, and Horites. And so it's the implication there is that they're killing these giant people whom Sodom and Gomorrah have partnered up with in this war. And I never noticed that before, but it makes sense in the context of how we're looking at this stuff, right? This is in Genesis. This is before the invasion, and so the fact that there are these people that have partnered with these wicked cities, which Sodom and Gomorrah and these other towns are being portrayed as, in order to rebel against another king and just cause general chaos and stuff. Shouldn't surprise us. Yeah.
Did you kill that guy?
Chedorlaomer?
Yeah.
Who kills him?
Yeah, did you see that?
No. Who kills him?
Abraham.
Oh, okay.
I went through that on Monday. I haven't.
When does that happen?
Whenever he goes to rescue Lot.
Oh, I didn't know he struck him down. I thought they just fought and he got lopped back.
And I also read about a guy named Og.
Yeah, yeah. One of the best named characters in the Bible for sure, rivaling Chedorlaomer, right? Yeah. So what's up with Og?
He had a bed made of iron, and it was maybe around 13 feet long.
Yeah, big old bed, right?
Yeah. And then he was, I forgot who killed him, but he was,
Yeah. So Moses and the Israelites end up killing him. Yep. Yeah. So he's a giant. We find out it doesn't talk about that until later in so Deuteronomy 2. It brings him up, and then doesn't actually go into the details that he was a giant. He had this enormous bed, kind of idea. Yep.
We're given the finger and toe count of Goliath, who was 24, and he was 9'6", which would cause some people to be skeptical that anybody was, can that really be true? Well, a guy named Robert Wadlow was 8'11" here in America, his tallest modern person that ever lived.
Yeah.
It's not out of the realm.
Yeah, I think so. Let's think about this for a moment. How should we think about giants? Giants in Scripture. Why do we find out about these giants living in the land, and why is this part of the story of the Bible? Isn't this too fantastical? Isn't this too they were probably just big people, right? There's not really giants out there. Is there?
Well, what we did not have, I'm sorry, what we did not have is we did not have multiple Edens. We had one Garden of Eden, and human development proceeded from the garden. And so you have all of these different families of man developing from the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pre-patriarchal. You don't have a patriarchal age in the sense that you had under Abraham, but you still have families and tribes and then nations that have developed out of the lineages that came out of Eden. So this is an interesting, these are not spiritual beings mingled in among, this is all post-Eden and low covenant. The covenant that they have, some of these folks somehow or another have a tendency to find a religion, a faith.
Mm.
That probably would be the case of Abraham's father. He found a faith where he was. So it's an entire blank area of human development. And we see these situations that come at us. And again, we need to resist the temptation to lean into the supernatural or in the wild, hypotheses.
Okay. Can you say a little bit more about what you mean?
Say it again?
Can you say a little bit more about what you mean?
Well, with respect to all of these people, you're seeing people that have immense stature. They have stature as far as the skills, the technologies, the arts, and things like this. These are all things that have been guided from the man that was created in the Garden of Eden. These are all beings that have developed with the seed of God and the capabilities of God within themselves. And so these are the developments of mankind that God intentionally put into mankind. The way that they chose to use their gifts or traits or characteristics is the subject matter of a lot of these conflicts and alliances.
Okay. So you would understand giants as in kind of a metaphorical way that we talk about the giants of industry. We talk about people that are giants. They seem bigger than real life.
They certainly present themselves that way to the little pre-Hebrew people.
Mm-hmm.
These folks that have come out of the Garden of Eden are not necessarily the best of the best of the best. I mean, we like to represent Adam as the apex of God's creation, but it could be just a starting point for God's creation in mankind.
Any other thoughts, Chris?
I think the significance of the giants is they represent obstacles that the Israelites could not see past with the help of God in order to take the land.
Mhm.
That was their significance, that they became a cause of unbelief.
I mean, if you're a race of people that are 5'2" on average and 145 pounds on average, you got a 2-foot sword, this is all hand-to-hand combat. So you're gonna line up across the field with a race of people that's 5'8" to 6'2" and 240 pounds, what are you gonna call? And they're definitely, what's the word you use? Right out of my head. Obstacle, they're definitely an obstacle. I mean, what are you gonna call? Because you gotta go fight them.
Yep.
You don't get to snipe them, you don't get to hit them, you gotta go over there and chop. What would you call them besides giants? I don't think there's any reason to import a mythological, view into the scriptures, it's just, we're grasshoppers in their sight, that's what I would think too.
I think King Og, if you look at the word there, it's not a bed that was 13 feet long, which I think is more definitive of his height. It was his sarcophagus. It was his coffin that they found. And I think as I did a word search on that, looking at when that's used, that bedstead. So bed, you could, I mean, if you're a king, you could have a giant bed. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily that large, but a coffin probably is more indicative of someone's height. So I think there is something to be said about Goliath, though, and I relate it back to Cain. There was a mark on Cain. We don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some sort of genetic marker that went with, as I see it, as evil, right? That went down through the generations of people that were opposed to God. And so I think that there certainly was large people, whether they were 6'5" or 7'2", like Royce said, we know that there's people 8'11". I found a list of people in the Americas in the last 100 years. There's like 36 people that are over 8 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some connection, there's a genetic disposition to having 6 fingers and 6 toes, and that's connected to giantism.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I think that there is a non-supernatural explanation, but I also think that, yeah, that was a definite obstacle of these large people that were just aggressive, evil people.
Gotcha. Yes, ma'am.
I don't see why we shouldn't take the supernatural route to it, because, in Genesis chapter 3, it says, because you have done this, cursed are you, then all cattle, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. So that already tells me that there's some sort of genetics involved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why we shouldn't take that route. I don't think that, we should try, well, my husband and I had a really good Bible study with Royce where the theme of the essence of the Bible study was, if the Lord did not provide an explanation for something, then we shouldn't assume it. We shouldn't assume this, that, or the other if the Lord didn't already provide an explanation for it.
Mm.
So, this world was created supernaturally, and just because we cannot rationalize something, it doesn't mean that that didn't exist.
Sure.
If it's, maybe the Lord didn't put it in there, that, the Lord did not say that the angels couldn't do that.
Mhm.
The Lord didn't say that they can do that. Maybe it wasn't important. Maybe that part of angels having children with human women wasn't relevant because that wasn't the message. It
Yep.
wasn't the point. But for me to try to rationalize the impossible and trying to say, oh, well, this doesn't exist because it just doesn't make sense to me, I think also to a certain extent is an offense to God, because then what tells, then our faith is only based on what we can rationalize.
Mhm.
We can only believe what we could rationalize at that point. Now, it says here, your seed, the Nephilim, comes from the word nephal, which means fallen. So the only thing that we could think of fallen that is connected to genetics is angels.
So remember, Nephilim means giants. There is a verb to fall, but it means to fall on. So there are people that try to make that connection with Nephilim and that word to fall. I don't think it's a good connection, because you need basically different vowels and things. But I hear what you're saying. I think it's a very good point. That as we're looking at the scriptures, there are things in here that we would say are like there's no good natural explanation for how this, how the plagues happen, or how the sun stopped in the sky during a battle. How we believe that Jesus Christ died physically and was raised from the dead, right? And after 3 days of being dead, and there's not a natural explanation for that. There's a supernatural one, that he was raised by the Spirit of God, right? And so I don't want you to feel like you have to believe one way or the other on giants. But what I do want you to think about is if you are kind of set on one view, consider the other view that's been presented, I think, pretty well from both sides here, and consider that view, because I think it's good to challenge our own thoughts. It's good to wrestle with the text. And Monique, I think you did a really good job presenting this idea of the seed of the giants. I think that's going to be, the seed of the snake, the seed of Satan. It does play into this story that we see here in Genesis, right? There's this opposition to God's plan and people that are partnering with those that are in opposition, and then there's a group of people that God has selected and chosen to be his messengers and be the ones who are going to carry out his will. And so, one thing more to consider that we haven't looked at yet. If you could turn to Joshua chapter 11 real quick. So the book of Joshua, the first half is very exciting. The second half, not so much. Because there's just huge lists of it's like if somebody were to talk about a map to you, and this is what it would look like. And so it's very challenging to read through. This probably the second most common spot people stop reading through the Bible in a year. The first one being Leviticus. Okay, so we get to chapter 11. This is kind of where everything slows down. We don't get a lot more action after this passage here. Because this is, they take the south, and then in chapter 11, they take the north, right? So we see the first 10 chapters is how they are going to take the entire south portion of the land of Canaan, and then in chapter 11, they take the entire north portion, right? So it's very condensed. And then at the end of chapter 11, we kind of get a summary of everything that's happened thus far. So we'll start at verse 20, Joshua 11:20. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts to meet Israel in battle, in order that he might utterly destroy them, that they might receive no mercy, but that he might destroy them, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, from all the hill country of Judah, from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. There were no Anakim left in the land of the sons of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, in Ashdod, some remained. So Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and Joshua gave it for inheritance to Israel according to their divisions by their tribes. Okay. And then we get a list of kings they beat, and then we get the map described to us in words. And then we kind of end it by saying, oh yeah, and by the way, they didn't actually finish taking the land. There were portions that were left undone, which rolls us right into the book of Judges. Okay, so that being said, again, I think there's just this very strong line that you can trace through the Torah and into Joshua of these people that need to not be in the land. They're in the land, and they need to be destroyed, completely and totally. Now, there are some people that don't need to be destroyed utterly. They're taken as captives. They take women and children as captives, and they don't wipe out their whole city and burn it to the ground. In some cities, they don't burn completely to the ground. And so, to me, I think one of the helpful ways of understanding the giants in this way is the seed of the snake, and connected somehow to this line that we've been talking about, is that God has kind of seen these people and said, these folks have partnered with Satan in some way that's kind of irreconcilable, and he hardens their heart, right? And that's not a thing that God does by himself. You look at the story in Pharaoh. Pharaoh hardens his own heart, and then God hardens his heart, and then Pharaoh hardens his own heart. It's this idea of giving into sin kind of totally and completely until there's no turning back. And so when I read through this story, I think this is a helpful way of understanding kind of the intensity of the violence and action that goes into clearing out the land, particularly of these people groups that are associated with the giants. So I don't know if that if those connections all make sense, but to me this is something I still wrestle with. You know, I was in war. I shot at people, and I didn't shoot at people when I thought that they weren't combatants. When they if I couldn't positively identify them as enemy combatants, then me and my men would not fire at them. And so, you know, seeing this, I'm trying not to push our own morality and standards of, you know, the laws of war as they currently sit you know, in the world onto this time and place. I wouldn't presume that we are right in everything that we've decided in the way that we conduct war. But also it's very challenging when you see some of the things that are described in the way that they're described. So I don't know. I just want to open up for any last comments on the giants and this theme that's gone through here. Anything to add?
Well, people will complain, whether it's literal or hyperbolic in terms of the destruction of these people. People will complain, you know, there's too much evil in the world, it can't be God. It says, so this is God doing something about evil.
Hmm.
Complain about that. So it's just kind of our nature, I think, to think we're more moral than God. And to, it's just kind of the human nature, I think.
Yep.
Inconsistent, and whether it's hyperbolic or not, this is God judging people in time, which he doesn't do very often, thankfully. But that's what's going on, and he has the right to do it.
And the wiping out of peoples says nothing about their eternal state. We believe that God will judge righteously in every case. And so the termination of their lives on this earth is not necessarily a termination of eternal life.
They could, sorry.
I was gonna say, for me, I struggle to understand how bad sin is and what it really means to God, especially when I'm reading the Old Testament. It really strikes home how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, when God is willing to just wipe out people, it really means a lot. I mean, sin is so bad, right? Like, I was reading about Phineas killing 2 people with a spear whenever God was plaguing them before they came into Canaan, and 24,000 people were died because of a plague because of their sin. And the good thing that happened was Phineas killed 2 people that were sinning, that were causing it to start, you know? So that the act of killing was a good thing because of how bad sin is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, and I think it's challenging, especially for us, because our lives are so comfortable, because we have so much justice, because we live in a very prosperous place. We don't experience the tragedy of sin and we do experience that. We don't experience injustice and just the naked destruction of tyrants and wickedness in a way that forces us into saying sin is awful. Sin, we need salvation from this oppression, and so I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But like if you leave this country, if you go to other places and you see wickedness and evil rampant in a way that people are murdered in the streets and there's no justice and it's the strong that survive and they collect up women like trophies and have terrible things done to their enemies who are captured in the middle of the night, right? Like all these things that we don't have any experience with, I think are on the forefront of people who have come out of slavery in Egypt, right? That's on the forefront of their mind, and they see the destruction that happens here. This has been a good discussion. We have about 7 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and hold off on. So I have the second half of our discussion today was going to be why we're studying these spiritual beings. Why are we studying these spiritual evils? I just want to make a quick mention of. I think we need to know the enemy, or at least understand their capabilities, their limitations. This was one of the basic things we did in the Marine Corps. When you're trying to do an attack, you do a reconnaissance. You try to understand who the enemy is, what their makeup is, what they're capable of, what their weaknesses are, and in order to fight. And so if you're going to know, if we're going to live in this world and we face an enemy who's not humans, right? That's what we learn in Scripture, that we aren't facing flesh and blood. That's what Ephesians 6 tells us. This is a spiritual battle, and so we need to understand who our spiritual forces that we're facing are. This doesn't mean that we get cozy with them, that we we try to engage in any sort of conversation or any sort of interaction, but we do need to know what we're facing. And the good news is that Jesus has already defeated their best weapon, right? Their best weapon was death, and we don't have to worry about that, which is a crazy thing to say as fragile humans. But their one weapon that was their go-to weapon over and over again. It's like let's just kill everybody that is opposing us, right? They tried that with Jesus's early followers. And because Jesus overcame death, that weapon no longer worked, right? And so people expected Jesus to come in and conquer Rome and overturn everything and become this king on earth. But he instead let evil try and use their weapon on him, and then he reversed it on them. And then within 300 years, he had turned all of Rome into something like a Christian group, right? He had conquered Rome without lifting a sword. And so as we think about these spiritual battles, and I think it's a worthy use of our time, especially for the last 3 years, we've really tried and been focused on how we study the Bible, trying to build those skills and habits and patterns. And so now I think we're trying to take it a little deeper. To finish off our discussion, though, I just want to look at a couple things. If you could turn to Deuteronomy chapter 20. No, sorry, not Deuteronomy 20. Deuteronomy 18. There are a lot of passages like this where God is talking about why he wants the Israelites to go in and destroy these people and to have nothing to do with them. I thought this was a good representation of many of them. But let's just take a look at this real quick. Deuteronomy 18, verse 9. When you enter the land which the Lord your God gives you, You shall not learn to imitate the detestable things of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one who uses divination, one who practices witchcraft, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, one who casts a spell, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these things is detestable to the Lord, and because of these detestable things, the Lord your God will drive them out before you. You should be blameless before the Lord your God. Okay. So how is this sin related to these evil spiritual forces that we've been discussing?
Well, I was going to mention a minute ago when we were talking about why would God wipe these people out. We talked about this on Monday morning, like child sacrifice, which it says your son or daughter going through the fire. That's what it's talking about. It's kind of interesting. And like in Vashon, just this week, I was looking up some of the archaeological evidence that they found, and they found altars full of children's bones in that area. That's
Yeah.
just one example, which is called out here, and it was obviously something that was detestable. And I mean, there's a reason that needs to be completely blotted out.
Yeah, so that's extraordinarily wicked,
Yeah.
and absolutely a bad thing. And I think there's actually two kinds of rituals that many pagans would engage in. So one is actually a child sacrifice, so killing your child. Another is passing it through the fire in more of like a ritualistic way. And the idea is that this is the altar to your God. You pass them through the fire in order to say, I'm devoting this child to you, and I'm going to raise them in a way that honors you and this spirit, whatever it represents. And so it's like a devotion, dedication to what we would consider a demon, right? This spirit that's accepting worship from these people. And so if you think about this, but also the other practices that are mentioned here, how are these related to these spiritual forces? What's the problem with these practices? They're corrupt. In what way?
They corrupt.
They corrupt in what way?
Doubt, it puts power in their own hands and doesn't give you the power of the Lord.
Yeah.
You start playing God at that point, which
Yeah.
is what Adam and Eve did ultimately, was making the decision to play God.
Yeah. So why would you do divination? You want certainty about the future, right? You want to know what's going to happen. You want to be able to get information back. And so if you put enough resources and time and effort into determining the future, can you get a better idea about what the future is going to hold? Yeah.
You can create your own future if you're brutal enough.
Yeah, absolutely, right? I wanna make sure that my kingdom is running smoothly, right? And so I'm just going to kill anyone that gets in the way, and grease the gears with the blood of these people. And so you look at all these practices, and it's all about this exchange with these spiritual forces in order to bring about. It might be certainty, or it might be favor, or it might be whatever it is. It's this deal with the devil, with these wicked evil forces in order to get benefits, right? And it becomes this symbiotic relationship where I provide things for my gods, and they take care of me. And so this wickedness has to be stamped out, and it has to be eliminated. And if it wasn't, if it wasn't something that was tempting, then why do the Israelites keep falling back into it? Why do they keep going back to these gods? Why do they keep setting up these idols? Why do they keep doing these things? It's because they want that certainty, and God says, no, in my kingdom you get the future from my prophets, and the future is I'll bring blessing if you honor me in my covenant. I'll bring destruction if you don't. Right. Yep.
And this is why prayer and fasting are weapons given to us by God to fight these things, and to know that people are out there practicing witchcraft and doing all these evil, abominable deeds because eventually it's a continual spiritual fight, but soon and towards the end, it's going to get physical. So if we are not strengthening our spiritual side, we're just going to fall apart on the physical side as well.
Yeah, and it's only a matter of time before challenges come your way in your life, right? Things might be going well now, but something bad is going to happen.
And the Old Testament is very brutal, and so is the end going to be brutal. So don't leave out what could happen and what may happen at the very end before Jesus takes control.
So we're out of time. I wanted to mention just a couple more things that we didn't have time to talk about today, but I want you to consider because I think they're crucial to the way we think about things. So remember, the Israelites are not all biological descendants of Abraham, right? Some of the most famous Israelites, in fact, trace their ancestries back to non-Israelites. You think about Caleb, right? He's a Kenizzite, which is not an Israelite. You think about David. His great grandma is a Moabite, right? Ruth. There's all this mixture going on, and so we think about a nation or a people as like biological descendants. Hey. But for ancient people, if you're the child of someone, it just means that you are following after their pattern. You're one of them. You're furthering their mission, whatever that mission is. And so to be a child of God just means that you are brought into that family and that you're on that program. But if you're a child of, if you're one of the seed of the snake, it just means you're on the other program, right? One or the other. All right, thanks everybody. So try and finish out the know your enemy, and then the homework I think will clarify some of that as well. Thank you. Sweetie.
Very good, how are you?
Trying to get Elizabeth Arnold to ride. Yeah, Roberson's going